Hi guys, long time no see. Sorry about the absence, but we are finally back in our East Coast based city here in City Skylines 2. As always, I'm your host and creator Legio, and if you like what you see, then you should do the typical YouTube stuff down below, because that would greatly help out the channel, especially with recent events, keeping me from posting for a long time. I don't want to rehash anything. I put out a channel update recently telling you what was going on. Essentially, life got really busy, and the recent update broke the save pretty badly, so it took me some time getting things fixed, and I'm missing a few things here and there, but the game is running, and I'm just going to be happy with what I get. So enough of that. Let's go ahead and start talking about what's going on with the city. And a quick recap, we have our Riverport Harbor we built in the last episode, and gotta say, I really like the way it turned out. Got some pretty decent feedback on that, so I was really happy with this. And then it neighbors our power plant and garbage incinerator over here, which is, providing the services we need to the city. If you have a sharp eye, you'll notice that some of the decals and surfaces I had in this area, making it dingy, are missing. Those are some of the things I wasn't able to salvage from the save, and I'm not going to go back and fix it. We're just going to let good enough be good enough. So that is what we built in the last episode, and that leads us to a problem that we are going to address in this episode. And the fact is, we need residents and workers, because we have a lack of labor all over the city, basically. So this says high-skilled labor. We really just need labor everywhere. So we're going to create some housing for people to move in. And to do that, we're going to expand the city. And the area we're going to expand into is going to be in the middle of your screen right here. We've been staring at it for the last couple seconds. Now, for this area, I had a few goals with it. First, I want to keep it fairly dense. I like the aesthetic of dense areas, and it makes sense because they're near this river port. This would be a lot of there'd be a lot of desire to live over here because the access to the jobs right there. And thinking back historically, they would live as close as they could to where they work. So I like the idea of the density being here, and I plan on using as much of the World Tour pack assets as possible. Some of them will be static ploppables, some of them will be functional, most of them will be functional. That's my goal, is to have them be functional, but sometimes they'll have to be static. And yeah, we're going to use as much as we can. Great use out of the northeastern pack of things going to be had here, but I'm going to try to get a little bit of everything in there. So we'll see how that goes. And then the ultimate goal is to make sure this city doesn't completely break down, because it's already broke and we don't need it to be even more broke. So we'll see what we come up with. But let's go ahead and just dive into the live play. Let's dive into the fast play and see what we come up with. Alrighty guys, so to start things off, I first laid down our main arterial road for the region, trying to be as unique as I can with it. And I do my best to follow the topography for once. It's probably hard to tell, but there is a little bit of a hill there, and I follow it as best I can. And this main road is going to act as the focal point for the grid I'm about to lay down. And I choose to hand draw this grid just so I can have more control over it. I've had comments in the past asking why I don't use the grid tool, and I do sometimes use it, but I find the in-game grid tool, while it's very convenient, it can be pretty hard to be exact with it, and it can give you some really wonky grids, especially when you take it to a larger scale. And if you're a control freak like me, I do suggest laying the roads yourself. To do it, I only use the snap to existing geometry, snap to cell length, and snap to 90 degrees to create my grids. Just gives more precision. If you use any more of the snapping tools, things get complicated and it snaps to the wrong stuff. So keep it simple, don't overcomplicate things. And when I was building this, I did have some pretty specific dimensions in mind for the grid, so it was just better to draw it myself anyways. Now to dive into the nitty-gritty details of things, each block is going to be 88 by 200 meters. And these dimensions are there to keep everything really compact and be really dense, because I want this area to be dense. And these measurements are surely going to keep it compact. And you might be asking, why did I choose 88 by 200? Seems really specific, and I'd like to explain that. The 88 meters is based solely off of the assets I plan on using. I went through and checked out a lot of them, and I found the New England row houses fit best for what I had in mind, having it be 88. So most of them are 4 units deep, and I plan on running an alleyway behind the residences, which the alleyway itself is 1 meter wide. So in total, I needed 9 units for clearance, which would translate to 88 meters. Yay math. And then 200 meters is something I found myself that the game likes. It's a pretty good distance to allow for all of our feeder roads to function properly and not get too overwhelmed. These roads still get overwhelmed. You're going to see a lot of traffic backups here and there. And if you're hearing a loud noise, that's my dog not wanting to sit still. I apologize for that. I don't know if my mic is going to pick it up or not. But you're going to see this area is going to explode and explode rather quickly. Traffic comes to a standstill, and it's because I plop everything down all at once. I have no patience. And I initially chose to have that arterial road run diagonally through the region. Typically, these diagonal roads follow well-established routes that predate the road system. In the US, they often followed Native American paths. So in theory, there was once a Native American path that followed that hill line. I think that's a fun piece of headcanon to have here. But in all honesty, I did it because I thought it looked cool. I thought it was going to give us more interesting block shapes and challenge me to fill the spaces a little bit better. And I typically avoided doing this when the game first came out because early Skylines 2 was very unforgiving. Anytime you tried to step out that box, it would force you right back into it. But with all the additions to the game and the updates, I feel pretty confident we're going to create something nice and pretty here. And these kind of projects are what make a city look and feel organic anyways. They're not just giant, massive grids. You've got to sometimes break the grid. And I really do like the look of diagonal roads and cities breaking things up. Adds a bunch of character. And I love this saying, it breaks that waffle effect. I just love saying that. But when I was building this out, we did need some highway connections for the area because they would be very, very much needed here. I don't do anything too special. I primarily focus on keeping things compact, and I do tap into the major interchange we built in the earlier episode. I told you that thing would be subject to change. It's that big 5-way interchange right there I'm working on. And I think I tapped into it pretty well. It feeds into that main arterial road that's going to be developed in coming episodes. So I think that all works out very well. What I did is I reworked the ramp alongside that highway and just added another exit and extended it a little bit. I know weaving is going to be a problem here, but it's a computer and they can just figure it out. The Northeast does have weaving problems from everything I see on YouTube and Reddit and anything else where people talk about driving in the Northeast. So why should this city be any different? And now we are beginning the long and arduous task of filling out this grid. And it's long and arduous because I was very stubborn and placed everything more or less by hand using Find It and Plop the Growables. Would have been a lot quicker if I just zoned everything, but when I played with that off screen, it didn't populate the way I wanted. The aesthetic just wasn't what I was going for. So I took the long and arduous journey of placing everything by hand, and the end result is great. It just took a long time. If you build this way, you know what I'm talking about. It can be a huge time suck. But again, the end result is awesome, especially when I come back a little bit later and detail everything. But what I'm doing here is I'm filling up this area with the northeastern row houses because they look awesome. When I zoned it, they didn't populate the way I wanted to aesthetically, so going by hand was definitely the right call here. And like I said earlier in the episode, all these assets are either 3 to 4 units deep, which then allowed me to build an alleyway on the back side. And I like that aesthetic because in my head, that's where the trash services and other service vehicles would access the property to render their services. How many times can I say services in one video? But it looks really good, especially when I come back and add some trees and bushes to the area to fill the area out. Some residents are going to get driveways on the backside because they're lucky. You know, you got to shop around and get that right residence where you can park your car because it's America and parking your car is very important. Another thing that I don't know if you can tell is I adjusted those one-way roads. I allowed parking only on one side of the street because parking on both sides of the street just felt very cluttered to me. So I came back and just upgraded or downgraded the roads, however you want to look at it, so that they can only park on one side. And I think that looks really good. I also later on come back in and fill the area with some trees on the sidewalk because that looks really good to me. But I did have to take a break from all the hand plopping and resort to zoning along this main street here, known as Lafayette Street. It's going to be a main corridor for this region, which will need a name later on. We'll get to that at the end of the episode. But I also use the zoning to kind of see the different mixtures of how the zones work together. I primarily use the North American, Northeastern, and Southwestern packs here, really hammering the mixed zones for this because they look really good. If I didn't like the look of it, I would just bulldoze it and let the game try again, which you can see me doing so multiple times. I do come back to this space later and hand plop a few buildings that I think work better for the space, but we'll get to that when we get to that. And then I move right back into plopping everything by hand because I love the self-abuse and I love abusing you guys by watching it. But this gets pretty repetitive here. It's a lot of the same stuff over and over with Move It coming to save the day. So I'll just let the work speak for itself and let you guys listen to some pretty chill music while I do so. Alrighty guys, so I am back with some mediocre commentary and some aggressively average building of this city. And I'm now shifting my focus from filling in the neighborhood with residences and just spamming row houses everywhere to start placing down some of the services that they're going to need. And most of these services are going to primarily be located around Lafayette Street as their central focal point. That'd be the street that I put a lot of the mixed commercial zoning on. It's cutting the neighborhood basically right through the middle, acting as the spine for it. And I'm going to rework some of the land parcels along that street as well throughout the rest of this episode, just making everything look a little bit better and fit in more seamlessly. This is also the point in the episode where I'm going to start mixing up and getting in a lot of the different regions into this neighborhood instead of all the northeastern. I actually have a goal of putting in each region or had an asset from each region into this neighborhood. And the end result is pretty sweet. I really like it. And I kicked that off by first plopping down the Southwest Fire Station here. And even though it appears very California in nature, this station fits into this area very well. When I was in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, I saw buildings that looked a lot like this, and I really liked them. They were cool. It's a distinct building style. But I was able to make some adjustments with this building using the better Bulldozer mod, decals, and some surfaces to rough the area up and give it that northeastern vibe I was looking for. I also tweaked the pathways and added some dome parking to the fire station to just give it that American spice it was missing. Adding a few of these details and then putting in some trees on the backside really filled this area out. I think it looks awesome. One thing I had to say is you can now tell the city is transitioning into the fall season, and this is my favorite season for City Skylines 2. I think the developers did really well with the trees and bushes. The colors on them look great for the season, and I'm really happy with that result. But right next door, I placed down a police station for the area, and I picture this being more of a substation to service this community, not necessarily a large police station. You'll have that a lot with police forces. When they have large regions to cover, they'll do multiple substations to better service the community and, not get so overwhelmed. It also fit into this lot shape really well. It allowed me to put in a very American parking lot to service the building, and I had to use Move It and the lane connector tool to give some sense to that node that's connecting to Glade Street right there. Otherwise, traffic would have lost its mind. I also added a few row homes on the backside to give it some character, because in my headcanon, there was housing along this way, and the city had to use eminent domain to put a police station there, and those were the houses that remained standing. And then right next door, I placed down the Eastern European Medical Clinic. I gotta say, I really like the aesthetic of this building. It has that look of being built in the 70s with a very intended function, that being medical. And it's like a cross between brutalism and late modernism, where it was function over style. And that makes sense given where this building comes from, where it originates from. I also manipulate the surface pathway and some invisible pathways to better fit in the space and connect it up to the sidewalk. Also on this plot of land, I use some of the Chinese regional apartment buildings to fill in the remaining space. And with a little move-it magic and some recoloring of the buildings, this block turned into one of my favorite spots. I thought it was pretty cool how these two region packs complement each other so well here, and it just shows how great the asset creators are that they could do something like this. I never thought I would have a Chinese building sitting next to what I believe is a Ukrainian building. That's just pretty cool, and I think it's a great representation of how this game brings us together globally, because cities are a global thing. It's pretty cool, in my opinion anyways. All right, next on the rocket docket of things to do, I address our death care needs, because if you couldn't tell, we have a death wave going on in the city. As indicated by all the little blinky hearses over the building saying, hey, I have a dead body in me, please come get it. And we first begin addressing it by putting down the UK parish, because honestly, it looks perfect in this area. The thought process I had is this cemetery had been founded long ago, and the city just kind of continued to grow up around it. It's like a little small piece of history that's just stationary in time and is surrounded by an ever-changing world. Maybe that's a little poetic for a video game, but screw it, I like the concept. And later on, I do put a better solution down, but I thought having that old-style cemetery was pretty cool. You also saw me attempt to put down the French crematorium. That ended up having to go bye-bye because the French pack kept causing crashes in my game. I couldn't get it to work no matter what I did, so I had to make a tough choice and remove the French pack from my playset entirely. I do apologize to any French viewers if you wanted to see me build that. I did have ideas of putting in a French quarter for the city that I thought was going to be cool. Just right now, it's not working, and I'd rather have the game work than nothing else. So tough decisions had to be made. But then I move on from that and build a high school here in the central local area on Evergreen Street. The location of this was pretty well planned. It fits into this little trapezoid a lot very, very well in my opinion. And also with it being central, it's going to make it easy to service it with public transit that I'm going to build in upcoming episodes. I do have some pretty good ideas for the public transit for this region. It's going to be a mix of metro, buses, and stuff like that. I'm pretty excited to build it, honestly. And then I circle back to the block containing the UK parish and just add some more housing to fill in this awkward space. Be pretty cool buildings if you're very goth. I think goth people would want to live in this spot right here. But I add another wing just to get a little bit more death care coverage, and it does very well. And after I get this little space filled up, I think it turns out pretty good. And then I move on to adding a sister school for the high school with this elementary school. And using Move It, I centered it up in that lot, so now the Sims can access the building from both the front and the rear, and that adds a bit of realism. It looks pretty cool to see them come and go from that building on both sides. I then spent a lot of time customizing the area around the public school. I'm building out a play area here, a playground with some tennis and basketball courts. And I gotta say, I had a lot of fun building this elementary school. Move It and the assets made it look a lot better. I think it turned out great. And then I come in and fill in the awkward space between the school and those commercial buildings on the backside here with a good old parking lot. I add some more dome parking to it, so that looks good. And then I come in here and I build my own custom playground. Sorry, I'm having a very difficult time talking right now. I build a custom playground here and then use some more surface work to rough it up a little bit, make it look like it's used. And I think this area turns out pretty good. I gotta say, if I were a parent in this area, I would very begrudgingly let my child attend the school because I have no better options for me. I'm now starting the difficult task of filling in all these irregularly shaped blocks along Evergreen Street here. And there's a lot of various angles along this road, so making things fit can be quite the challenge. There's a lot of trial and error during this phase of the build, but ultimately I think things work out and they look pretty good. Also, I'm just going to go ahead and apologize if things sound odd or noisy. I'm trying to play tug with my dog while I'm recording this because she's an extremely needy girl and I'm a great multitasker. But I start things off by building the custom park space there. It was an easy addition because parks typically do have irregular shapes to begin with, so that's not uncommon. It was also common practice to put parks on these kind of lots due to the difficulty it would be to build them and the demand for public space. Some of the examples you would see in Manhattan, New York would be that of Jackson Park, Mitchell Square, and Cooper Triangle. Those are just some common examples I could find. And I do it by placing surfaces and pathways with some trees to make it a simple public space in the middle of things. It's nothing fancy, but I make it into a small little district as well so we can end up seeing it on the map when we zoom out. And I'm going to go ahead and defer to you guys for a name for that space. We'll get to that at the end of the episode as well. And then staying with the public space theme, I built a bus station here in a central portion of the area. I plan on having several bus routes run throughout this region before everything is said and done. And I do plan on laying down our first bus routes at the end of our episode during the live play. So stick around and watch me go ahead and butcher that, because I'm not very good at bus routes. I also chose to use the local bus station asset for the project. I forget which package this came with. I don't know if it was a region pack or just something I got on PDX mods, but it does look really good and it feels very inner city to me, so I liked it. It might be a little difficult for the buses to get in and out, but they can adapt and overcome. They'll figure it out. I then fill out the back side of the area with some more row housing to add to that density we've been working on. I've never been to the Northeast, actually. It's kind of weird that I haven't been there. I've been pretty much all over the West and the Midwest. But the Northeast is anything like Chicago, which I am very familiar with. It's pretty common for this kind of housing to butt right up next to public spaces like these. And those apartments, or housing I guess I could say, is very desirable due to its location to the transit. And then I add in some nice looking grass, very manicured, a few trees here and there, and a very nice mural on that building just to class things up a bit. And then nothing says class like a beat up parking lot in the rear space, because that's true luxury, is having somewhere to park your car. So I continue the tedious and monumental amount of effort and work of filling out all these odd-shaped spaces I've made for myself with this unique grid layout. I opted for self-abuse instead of ease of build for this one. And to keep things as fresh and interesting as I could, I use a mix of high-density and medium-density buildings, with a primary focus on the building heights themselves as my guide, while also trying to account for the demands of my residents. For inspiration in this area, I used Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, as it has the right kind of density and appearance that I'm going for. And I wouldn't say I recreated Flatbush by any means, but I did have it up on my second monitor while I built this area out, so some of that influence may have come through. And then to create a more realistic corner here, I spliced those buildings together using Move It and making sure everything was rotated correctly. And that just makes it look way more natural and realistic right here. And then filling up the backyard with some trees adds a nice touch, because trees are always good. And then I used this northeast commercial building right here to create another makeshift outdoor space for the residents. This building looks like mini pubs/breweries I have visited in the past, so it was a pretty cool addition. I imagine this would be a pretty popular destination for the locals to come and meet up and socialize while discussing all the terrible planning of the city and all the odd zoning codes as well. Because their mayor is an idiot, but he is all powerful, so they don't have a choice but to deal with it. And it was also around this point of my build when the latest update for City Skylines 2 came out, and it started causing massive issues with my game. I would have random crashes back to the desktop, and sometimes the game would even refuse to load. This was also around the time that I had to leave home for about a week. I was out in California for a work conference, and then got stranded out there an additional day and a half due to storms rolling in and my flight getting canceled over and over again. So I sat in an airport for about 12 to 13 hours. Cannot recommend it. 1 out of 10 stars. It was awful. So while that was happening, the city itself sat still and no building was occurring whatsoever. And to get things fixed, I had to uninstall some things and then one by one add everything back in. Unfortunately, I did miss some of the items that were in the game, and some were just broken for good, so some pieces are missing, and I'm too lazy to go back and try to find them all again, because I just don't have the time for that, and I figured I'd rather build things, and you guys rather me get an episode out than things being perfect, because perfection is the enemy of completion, in my opinion. But one thing I was able to salvage, one creation I was really proud of, even though it's, in the grand scheme of things, not that big a deal. I was able to salvage a mural that I'm going to put up on your screen here in a little bit. This mural it looked freaking awesome. I was really happy with the way it turned out. But it was also a frustrating task to try to save and fix it because the Find It mod would crash whenever I would search for any decal whatsoever. Anytime I would hover the mouse over one of the icons, the game would immediately crash. And I even went into the settings for Find It and changed the icon display for it to make things easier to avoid the crashes, and that didn't even work. The only remedy I found to it is I had to go into the actual decal menu itself and just find the decals the slow and painful way, the old school way, and then place them up one by one. So I got everything fixed, and it's looking good, and I'm really happy with that mural. It might be the thumbnail for this episode. I don't know yet. I just really like the way that looked. But I was really happy to save as much as I did with the city, because there for a minute, I thought everything was lost forever. So when I did get things saved, more or less, and the city was salvageable and playable again, things transitioned into the winter time for the city. And while I don't think the winter colors look bad by any means, they are definitely not in my top favorite for this game. This is definitely my least favorite season of the game. I prefer those warm tones of fall and spring and all that versus these cool tones. Kind of helps my mood, Like, it's kind of weird. When I look at this, it's a little bit more depressing, which I guess is a good thing, because seasonal depression, real. So, But winter always does come, especially in the Northeast, so we're going to continue to truck on. I will warn you, the LUTs and the graphics and everything get changed up a little bit, because I do go into the developer menu and I adjust some things off screen just to help improve the image quality to better your viewing pleasure. Also, I just really didn't like the way things look, so I had to make some adjustments here and there. But I then also built this park that you're seeing here, and to do this, I used invisible pedestrian pathways and these surfaces, and I really like the way it looked out. A little bit of manipulation with Move It and stuff like that, but ultimately, I think this is a great public space. And later on, and probably during the live play, if I remember to get to it, you'll see the residents are using it, and that's just really cool to see. Yeah, really happy with this space. And this seems like something I would like to visit. Let me know what you think of this down below. Now I start rebuilding some of the areas I had laid down earlier to improve upon them. This is an area that was placed down haphazardly and doesn't look the best. I can admit when mistakes are made, and this spot was definitely an eyesore. I wasn't happy with the way things looked, so it desperately needed redone. And from this point on in the build, I get a lot pickier with things. And from this point on, I become much more focused on the details, and I plan things out a lot better going forward. But for the space, I redraw the road network a little bit, making it a little bit more crisp, and add various apartment buildings to balance things out with all the row houses we have in the area. It just adds a little bit of variety and more housing options. And then I placed down the Eastern European school in the area because education was starting to become a bit of a concern for the residents. With the massive population swell we got, we needed to get those kids into school. And that's a common issue I encountered during my playthroughs because of my building style. If you haven't noticed, I like to keep the game paused a whole lot when I build, and then when I hit play, everything just happens all at once. I've played this way since City Skylines 1, and old habits die hard. But I do plan on making a conscious effort to let the game play out while I'm building going forward. It'll add a touch of realism, and it keeps life in the game as well. The next big project I start working on is these large apartment complexes to fill in the land space next to the highways. Originally, I thought about putting in a park next to the highway, but I scrapped that idea because it's just way too predictable and overdone in City Skylines builds. Every time someone posts a road layout on Reddit, the comments section turns into a course of put in a park, like it's the only move anyone knows. And I'm not hating on parks or Reddit users because that'd be dangerous for my health, but it's a little overdone and I wanted something different here, so I went with this. And this actually makes the area stand out, especially when we zoom out. To build this area out, I used the Chinese apartment buildings because they were great for this project. They have a really good height that I was looking for, and they had the appearance of being built in possibly the 70s or 80s to combat housing issues, which, believe it or not, we're actually facing because I want more population and this is going to help with that. What's also kind of cool for me is these assets look like dorm towers that I used to stay in during college at the good old Southern Illinois University Carbondale. Yeah, they had towers on campus and turned them into dorms. It was pretty unique and pretty cool in my opinion. I don't know if those dorms are still standing. I keep hearing that they're going to tear them down, but I don't know if that's happened yet. Oh well, I'll look it up later. For this project, I took some influence from Stu Village in Manhattan, and I plan on building a better, more realistic version of Stu later on, but for now, this is just a taste of what's to come. I used a parking lot road to cut through that complex and give some parking and road access to the buildings, because they were complaining about not being connected to the network and I needed to shut them up. And then I used some pedestrian paths and trees to create a pleasant enough environment for the residents, and hopefully they feel safe walking around this area at night. I would imagine it'd be pretty dark. So best of luck, guys. I then move on to this thin stretch of land and came up with a pretty slick design, at least in my opinion. I used some more of the Chinese apartments and I sit them down and turn them at an angle to match the parking lots I drew in with them. And this gives a very unique character to the skyline. I love the image of these towers when you get down to ground level And I think it's going to have a great visual when I start building out the downtown, because you can look across the river and see it, and that's going to look awesome. Using the parking lot roads for access, I kind of repeat what I did in the last complex where I put a bunch of paths down and then add some trees to cover up all the goofy little mistakes I've made. Filling in spaces next to highways can sometimes be difficult, but I think I found a pretty good way of doing it, and this is more unique than the old slap down the park and move on project. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Continuing my trend of building giant apartment blocks, I make one more right here next to our 6-lane main road. And this became a trusted method for me to fill out all the awkward shapes and large spaces for the neighborhood, while adding in some uniqueness and height to the city. After this, I believe I'm done building these complexes, at least for this episode, so you'll get a bit of a break. But I do like them. I think they look really good, and they're definitely different from what I usually do. But following the theme of mixing up all the themes, I incorporate Eastern European apartment buildings this time for the complex. I'm again impressed by how well the content creators did with the region packs. The flag icon might say Ukraine, but these buildings definitely look like buildings I've seen around the US, especially in the St. Louis region. The style of the building lends perfectly to that quote-unquote housing crisis motif I had in mind for the city. Like, this was a project a politician championed to combat housing issues. Instead of, actually addressing the cost of housing, they said, let's build a bunch of tall buildings and just shove people in, no matter how poor the quality of the building. I'm not saying the quality of the asset is poor, I'm saying the quality of these buildings would probably be poor, because they probably rush built it, and they weren't done right, and they had to come in and fix a whole bunch of stuff. You know how it is. Whenever the government gets involved, sometimes they set out for the right thing and they mess it up. But I'm not an anarchist, that's just the way things are. And then I move on and plop down this cute little Eastern European low rent building along this small little triangle space on the main drag. And I picture this being an old historic building that was built long ago and has remained standing. It eventually was turned into a museum of some kind, even though in-game it's providing housing for me. So double dipping in headcanon and usefulness, I guess. And I'm gonna say this used to either be the home of a prominent figure in the area or some kind of service building from back in the day. I'll let you guys decide that down in the comments. Get creative with it, I want to see what you come up with. And I do like the image of this small antique building surrounded by all the modern buildings that are about to come in. It shows some parallel between the two worlds, and I thought I had a little bit of forethought with this. I just think it looks really cool. And then it's back to the wash, rinse, and repeat of filling out the blocks with various ploppables, most of them being mixed use and or commercial along the main drag, with a whole bunch of high density or medium density residential here and there. I got as creative as I could with some of the spaces by adding courtyards and patios where I could, but you can only do so much. Things do tend to get a little tedious. And this was a lot of ground to cover, and I was still dealing with a bunch of crashes here and there, so progress was slow, but the end result is definitely a chef's kiss in my mind.
Y'all ready for this? Y'all ready for this? Y'all ready for this?
At this point, I realized I hadn't placed down any of the unique buildings from the game to help the city out. That is my bad. So I went on a hunt for some buildings that I thought would work here, and I landed on the Square Center. It's going to help with the import cost reduction, attractiveness, and the well-being boost for the city, at least in the local area. But I picture this being a community center or a library for the region, because those are always beneficial to people. It also fit into this odd shape, especially after I manipulate the surfaces out front to create a makeshift courtyard. And I kept this courtyard pretty open. I didn't put trees or bushes or anything. And that was to combat that feeling of urban claustrophobia you would get walking in this area. Because when I did an overview of the city and I did a first-person walkthrough on the sidewalks, along the streets, because I don't know where else you would walk here, I got that feeling of urban claustrophobia. I essentially had built sidewalk to sidewalk with no room in between to breathe, and made this place very unfriendly to pedestrians, which isn't what I wanted. I wanted the area to be dense, but not so dense that you'd lose your mind. Because I want my residents to feel happy when they walk around, even though they know in the back of their mind an all-powerful overlord controls everything around them at all times, and they have zero control over their lives. I don't know where that came from, but it is true if you think about it. So after my little tour, I made the conscientious effort to ensure I put more open spaces on the map, whether it be a park or courtyards like that. It also helps fill in some of those blocks where you have a tall building, gives you a bit of a setback, looks really nice, creates good public spaces. It's good urban planning. At least that's what the YouTubers tell me. So with all that urban planning done, I had to circle back once again to death care, because that's always a constant need in this game. People are always dying. It's very, very selfish of them. But when I had to remove the French crematorium because the French pack kept breaking my game, I needed to put another service down. So what I did, and what I'll probably continue to do going forward, is I copy and pasted what I did in a previous episode, and I make a makeshift graveyard. Cemetery? Yeah, we'll go with cemetery. What I do for this, if you're not familiar, is I place down the crematorium, put the extensions down that I want, and then using the line tool, I will place down random tombstones everywhere with paths in between. I add the alleyway for basically headcanon of that allows the hearse and or family members to drive closer to their loved one's gravesite. I then surround the area with a nice looking fence. Typically I use the European fences for that. They look a little nicer in my opinion. And then I put a whole bunch of trees and foliage down just to add some ambiance to the area, because the residents would probably like the foliage, but they're not known to really complain much. These also fit in great for the awkward spaces next to highways. You'll see me do that quite often. Those spaces they're awkward. I don't really know what to put there half the time, so this is a really simple and easy solution I came up with. Don't judge me. In fact, you should just copy me and then give me lots of credit, because I'm going to send a patent to the office for that one. But while I was also on my tour, I checked the informations tab, and our road conditions are terrible. I didn't show it on screen, but basically every road is terrible. That's why we're having all the accidents you see on your screen. It's not just traffic jams from people flooding into the city, because everybody wants to live here now. The road conditions are really bad. So I slapped down this road depot, and I didn't know what else to really do with this space. I just added a parking lot on the side. I used some of the invisible road networks to connect it so that they could drive to the spots. They didn't have to magically beam over from what is Chester Street, because that's weird. Cars can't do that. But I didn't do anything fancy here. It's just a very consistent Legio style building for this space, and it turns out pretty good, especially when we start building up around it. It also filled in another awkward space next to a highway, because I struggle with knowing what to do there, so they typically end up being service buildings or some kind of land use that I can make malleable, if that makes sense. But believe it or not, the fast play is getting close to an end, so I wanted to take the time to thank you guys for sticking around with me. And not just with this episode, which was rather long, I will admit, but it had to be to get everything I built on screen, but also with my inconsistent posting schedule. I know some people got a little frustrated, and I'm sorry, but I'm doing the best I can here. I do want to get these videos out more often and on a time schedule, which to me is once every 2 weeks, which I completely violated and could not live up to. But my life has gotten extremely busy. I've made a lot of excuses in episodes past. I'm not going to rehash that, but I am hoping my life calms down a little bit, and it seems to be, because I finally had time to sit down and do some of this. I do plan on getting another episode out a lot quicker than this one because I'm not going across the country this time, and I hopefully won't get stranded in an airport for a day and a half. But I do have another trip coming up, but this one's to Milwaukee, and I'm driving, and it's just over a weekend, so it shouldn't be too disrupting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that trip. That's going to be a fun trip. That's not a business trip for once. But, you know, that is enough of my rambling. I will give your ears a rest from me for now, and I will let you listen to some music, and I'll see you in the live play. Alrighty guys, so the fast play portion has concluded, and we turned this empty plot of land from this into this. And I have to say guys, this turned out amazing. I love this neighborhood. It looks fantastic. And when we get its sister neighborhood built up over here, things are going to look even better. Really excited for that. Gonna get that built in the next episode. Could have fit it in this episode because it would have been like 2 hours long, and ain't nobody got time for that. So let's go ahead and get a recap done and some close-ups of everything that we have going on. So let's work left to right, and down here we have a cute little apartment complex of red and green towers. And I can say cute because I'm very secure in my masculinity, but that looks like a pretty good place. And then we zoom out a little and we come to the center triangle that I kind of term the business triangle. That's where we have a lot of our service buildings like our healthcare, police, and fire, along with a few businesses and, you know, mixed commercial here and there. Then we come over here to where everything started with our row housing. And this looks awesome. I love the row houses in the game. The asset creators really outdid themselves. And in my mind, these row houses have been standing for well over a century, so they're not going anywhere anytime soon. But the need of residential was in high demand, so we kind of boxed in those row houses with some taller buildings, mainly apartment complexes. These right here, these angled ones being my favorites. I think these look awesome. When I turned them at an angle, it just did something for me. I really love the look of them. It's very unique. And the view here is going to be great when I get that downtown skyline built. It's going to be a really good view if you can look past those cranes right there. But yeah, overall, really happy with this neighborhood. I think it looks fantastic. Super excited. Really proud of myself. So yeah, if you liked it, you know what to do down below. But before we go, let's do a few housekeeping things here. Let me pull up my trusty little notepad. Okay, so we need to look at our info panel because a lot of people accuse me of not caring for the city. I just build it, not caring. But they were they were very adamant about it that they eventually just deleted their comment before I could even respond. But I did see you. So to quell that, I have been addressing a few things, and you saw some of it in the fast play. So let's just go through the info fuse. First one up is roads. Oh, we're transitioning to winter. That's going to be nice and pretty. Bring it on, Mother Nature. All right, so for roads, everything used to be very red. There were potholes everywhere. But now things are starting to turn around. They are getting green and yellow. So the roads aren't as terrible to drive on. You might not get a concussion when you drive on the roads. Traffic, I want to take this off for, well, let's look at this for a second. It looks red and yellow and everything. It looks really bad from this view in this neighborhood. But when you turn it off and you zoom in a little bit, you see traffic's not that bad. It's just the game, being silly. It's just being silly. Then we go into our electricity, and that's good. We don't have to worry about that for a long time. So not concerned about that at all. Then our water and sewage are doing very well. Happy with that. Go into healthcare, and that's probably our best thing. Everyone's getting the coverage they need. Everything's looking green, so not too concerned about that. Our garbage is doing really well, as it should, because we have the big beefy boy over here doing its job. Fire, we could do a little bit better on our average fire hazard, but overall everything's green. I haven't seen anything burn down yet, so I'm happy with that. We have no disaster control abilities, so that is what it is. We'll get that later. The police force is doing pretty well. There's going to be more police stations placed as we go along. There'll probably be police stations throughout the neighborhood. Admin, nothing to look at. Education, we could definitely do better on. We just had a huge influx of people, so we got to catch up on education. But this doesn't concern me a whole lot. And then we have no public transit. We have no postal service or internet right now. The other icon I wanted to show, because the only one other that matters to me, is the happiness. And overall, they're pretty happy. The things they're not happy about are things we can fix pretty easily, so I'm not too concerned about it. So, ooh boy, that is very white. All right, the last thing I had on here is I wanted to do some district work. So I drew this in the fast play, and the game tried to name it Victoria Croft, but I think I'm going to let you guys name that, and I'm just going to say name me right here. So name that park for me. Then the next thing I got to do is I got to draw the district for the neighborhood we just built. So I think we'll just use that diagonal road as a dividing line. Turn on our Anarchy real quick. And then we'll just follow this road right here. Use the highway as a guide, and then complete the area. And what name did it give us? I can't see it with the white. There it is. So it gave us Cedar Crest. Not happy with that. So I'm going to have you guys down in the comments below rename it, please. And I've been asked before, what kind of themes do I want for the names? And I'm really not picky. The only guideline I give is make sure it makes sense in a northeastern context. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. So that is basically all I had, guys. If you enjoyed the episode, please do the typical YouTube stuff down below. I greatly appreciate your patience with this channel and this episode. But I will see you in the next one, and you guys have a good day.